So before we start, I just heard the other day there's a lawsuit between DOJ and Ohio about the voter roll purging.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is there any impact on this election?
It potentially could, just in terms of the number of people that might still be eligible to vote. I mean, the purging is, I'm not sure in particular what's the basis for the most recent lawsuit, but the most recent directive we had, there was a case brought by the A. Philip Randolph Institute, and what they were was that people who had been purged, they're in a way added back to the voter roll. Well, they can still vote. They'll vote a provisional ballot, and then what we'll do is we have to check the provisional ballot to determine whether or not it's eligible to be counted. So in that way, so somebody may have been removed from the rolls
and they show up
because they didn't. The only way somebody would get purged from the rolls is if they haven't done anything in the last 6 to 10 years.
Yeah, so
they haven't voted, they haven't
responded
to the mailing. They haven't signed a petition. They haven't done any interaction with the voting process.
They just show up one day.
And they show up at the polls and they say, well, I'm supposed to vote here at this polling location. And
so they do have that provisional ballot. They can
exactly. So because that's always the rule at the Board of Elections. For if a voter comes in and wants to vote, we'll make sure that if they're in the right place. So what we can do is we can actually look up on. We have a master book of. And it's really actually we do it electronically, but it's a lookup where you can, based on their address, you can find out what their polling location is.
Right.
So and based on that, we'll determine, is this person in the right polling location? And if they are, they'll be allowed to vote a provisional ballot, and then we'll sort it out after the fact. If they're in the wrong precinct, they'll be told, you're actually in, down the street. But they'll be told what their polling location is, but if they're in the right polling location and they demand the opportunity to vote, they'll at very least, if they're not in the poll book, they'll be allowed to vote a provisional ballot, and then after that we'll sort out whether they're.
So how do you tell the difference between that and somebody who would never register in the first place?
Well, if they're somewhere in even if they're purged and they may not be in the poll book, we still have a record and we can determine that. And we can determine.
They registered at one point.
They were registered at some point, and then they could be counted. So, and unless they were canceled for some reason, and that's really were they canceled because they were incarcerated? Were they canceled because that they were listed as dead? They were canceled because they were listed as incompetent. So if any of those cancellations appear, then it can't be counted. So, if they're voting in the wrong, if they were never registered in Franklin County, they can't. So if they were registered somewhere else in Franklin County, then we would be allowed to count their ballot.
So Ohio, once you get out of jail, you are eligible right away. Right? You have to register.
You have to register.
Right.
So you can't rely on an old registration, which may have happened. You may have been registered 6 years ago. You've been incarcerated for 5 years. You come back and you want to vote, and you move back to your old neighborhood and you want to vote. It's like, no, you have to re-register. So
what about the incompetency? I mean, basically you're mentally ill.
Mentally ill. You may have been involuntarily committed because of mental health issues.
You have to have like petition the court to get that voter right restored or something?
Well, you have to, exactly. You'd have to have that lifted, that incompetency declaration. They'd have to have that lifted. So, all right, I'm going to give, before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and give. This is the League of Women Voters. I just found it to be a good kind of overview of all of the candidates and the office holders. So, because I'm nonpartisan, I mean, I'm a Democrat as the director of the board, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But and I can leave these out here. But talking about the candidates and that, I can talk a little bit about them. But the voter guide, League of Women Voters, is a very good nonpartisan They're made up of Democrats, Republicans, and so they put this voter guide together, and it's a good overview of the candidates that are on the ballot and the issues that the local Columbus area issues that are on the ballot. So in that way, we talk a little bit about them, but this will give you a good something you can take with you. And you got to make sure you have your glasses, because
do you mind
and for this, every candidate, oh, you can take as many as you like. We have a ton of them. So, but candidates actually they're contacted by the League of Women Voters, and the League of Women Voters gives them an opportunity to submit. And I think they put a word restriction, the number of words, a limitation on their responses, and so they give the candidates an opportunity. So everybody kind of has the same constraints in terms of describing themselves, and you'll see that some candidates didn't bother to respond. You'll find some candidates did. So
okay.
you let me know when you're ready, Vincent. So.
Okay, can we
Sure.
a few more seconds? You set up the equipment.
So the information here should be pretty objective. So all the information on the broadcast is kind of a little bit biased to certain parties. So the information here should be a bit like objective.
Somewhat, but it's also the candidates themselves talking about themselves. So some of this is, they're being very nonpartisan in collecting it and kind of laying it out how the candidates present it, but it's many of that's the information the candidates have chosen to give it the League of Women Voters.
It's equally biased.
Exactly, equally biased. Both. Everybody can say what they want about themselves, and
Yep.
I'm not sure what they do about the federal candidate. They probably do get something from
Campaign?
the federal campaign.
And I have a personal note on putting out the signs in front of one's house or in the front yard. Would that be something effective or useful to do? Because I see people do that, and I usually see either a group of Clinton can or the other party. There's no mixed alternate with each other.
Well,
local election is very effective.
Well, again, it's the.
I mean,
if you look at the purpose of them, I mean, in some respects, the national campaigns, the effectiveness of a yard sign in a national campaign is, I see if it's going to influence me that I see that my neighbor is a Trump supporter or my neighbor is a Clinton supporter, is that like, oh, okay, well, so I know Pete down the street and he's a good guy, and if he's supporting this candidate and I'm undecided, and the fact that this person in my neighborhood whom I like, and this person, they're all supporting this candidate. Okay, but most times the yard sign, the concept of a yard sign is name recognition, and so the presidential candidates have name recognition. It's not like the people don't know who the main presidential candidates are. So the local candidates, it's typically more effective for the local candidates because it's unfortunate that in many instances, if somebody doesn't know the candidate's name or looks at them on the ballot and sees two people for judge, and they happen to have remembered seeing this person's name, they may be more inclined to vote for it. So I see two candidates, and one of them happened to have a yard sign plastered in every corner in my neighborhood, and I remember that name, so I'm going to go ahead and vote for that guy or that woman because I saw their name.
Right. And that's the only way ring a bell to me, right?
Exactly. And so sometimes it is, how big's the name? I mean, there have been times where I've been somewhat critical of candidates on the campaign side of it because the candidates will have all this language on their yard signs. Like, no, your name and the office, that's all that matters. I mean, because really, when you think of how fast you go by a yard sign sometimes, you don't have time to read all the little fine, print on it. It's the person's name and what office they're running for. So.
So, I guess we can get started.
Oh, sure.
I'll just briefly introduce you. Thank you everyone for coming here tonight. And I know our community has been, this year has been actively involved in all the discussions this year. And we are eager to learn about the voting process at the federal level, as well as our local county level as well. And I'm glad Mr. Leonard can make it here tonight. And Ed used to be the treasurer of our county, and if you are doing your job paying your tax bills, you will see his name and also his picture as well.
Which county, Franklin?
Franklin County.
Yeah.
So
I'm not from Franklin.
So Ed recently changed his job over to become the executive director for the Franklin County Board of Elections, and he has a lot of experience as a public servant, and also he got involved a lot of community work as well. And with that, I would like to please join me to welcome Ed for coming here to give us a great talk here tonight.
Well, again, I want to thank you, Vincent, for offering me the opportunity to come. I'm excited about the opportunity of always coming out and talking to the public about what we do. Just to give a little bit more background, I do have a background in public service. I've worked in a lot of different offices over my time in government service. I've been a military prosecutor in the United States Army. I was a military defense counsel for a while. I've been in government administration now for probably 18, 19 years now. I recently became the director of the Board of Elections about 5 weeks ago now. But before that, I was treasurer of Franklin County. And then before that, I've actually been in other government administrations. But even though I've been in the Board of Elections now for about 5 weeks or so, I was actually deputy director of the Board of Elections back in 1998 to 2001. So I was actually deputy director of the Board of Elections back when the big 2000 presidential Clinton-Gore, or the Gore, Bush-Gore. And so I was deputy director of the Board of Elections back then, and so that was quite an experience to go through that presidential election. I'm hoping that this presidential election is a lot less contentious, but and hopefully a lot smoother in terms of the election results, that we don't have the battles that we had after the Gore and Bush election, so the 2000 election. But what it does, though, is it allowed me to have a lot of insight into how the Board of Elections runs. So coming in, a lot of things have changed in the 15 years since I've left the Board of Elections, but there's still a lot of things that are very much the same. And so one of the things I want to talk about is first how we go about voting in Ohio and Franklin County. We actually conduct 3 different types of elections for this election cycle. We have an early vote center. The early vote center is actually located at our offices. We're at Morse Rd, 1700 Morse Road, and it's across from the old Northland Mall site. So those of you familiar with the Columbus area, Morris and Carl in the Northland area. And in fact, we've probably got one of the best early vote centers in Ohio, because ours is more of a suburban area, free parking, surface lot, easy to get into building, get in and get out. The process is very smooth to get into the Board of Elections, to go through the process of early voting, and then get on your way. We also conduct a vote by absentee by mail. So early vote is an absentee vote. That you're not going to the polls on election day. So that's what's meant by absentee. But you are voting, and you have the early vote center. You've got the absentee by mail, so you're casting your ballot by mail, and then finally the election day process. So essentially, we conducting 3 elections, and then all the results are tabulated at once, and the results are all revealed on election night. So even though we're conducting the vote right now, no tabulation is going on. Even though the machines are recording the votes, we don't tabulate those votes, so we don't know while the election's going on. I mean, it used to be election day was one day. It was November, the second Tuesday or the first Tuesday of November, and now it's actually 30 days long, 28 days long. So we start in the middle of October, and we're conducting the vote. So it gives plenty of opportunity, but again, we're not tabulating that as we go along. So nobody knows during the course of the early vote whether somebody's winning or not. So I'm going to start with and then as I mentioned, the election day voting. The process for early vote, again, very simple. When you show up at the early vote site, you're asked to fill in a form that indicates that you want to vote early, absentee. You have to put your name and address, and you have to sign the card. You have to provide the last four of your social security number or your driver's license number. So unlike if you showed up at the polls on election day, you don't have to show an ID at the early vote center. And the reason that is because it has to be the same as if it were a vote by mail. And if you were voting by mail, you wouldn't have to show an ID to vote by mail. So to be consistent, somebody who's voting in person is held to the same requirements that somebody would if they were voting by mail. And if you're not required to show an ID to vote by mail, you're not required to show an ID to cast a ballot by an early vote. So again, you show up at our offices on 1700 Morse Rd. You go in, you fill out the application, you go to a table. The table, what they're going to do at the computer stations is they're going to look you up in the voter rolls. They're going to make sure that you are in fact registered to vote. They're going to figure out where, based on where you live, what ballot style you have to vote. And then they put a label on your card. You take that into the next room, and then the personnel at the Board of Elections will set your voting machine up to the right ballot style. And when I talk about ballot style, it's the right combination of races that you're allowed to vote on. So you would vote on different races based on where you live, because you may live, like everybody here is going to vote for president. Everybody's going to vote for the U.S. Senate. Everybody's going to vote in this. If you're in Franklin County, you're going to vote for the same countywide offices. But there may be some, like a state Senate race, that it's a district within Franklin County. So you may have a state house race in the state General Assembly. And that state house race, you may have some people in Franklin County. There's, I believe, 7 different state house seats in Franklin County. So depending on where you live, you may live in a different Senate district, you may live in a different House district. And so that combination, we have to identify that based on where you live. So, yes, sir.
How many different combinations do you have in Ohio?
In Ohio, my goodness, I'm trying to think just in Franklin County, I want to say 1,200 different combinations, I believe.
1,200.
I believe that's the right number.
Okay.
But again, so in Ohio, that's exponential. I mean, I'm sorry?
So if the voters, if they use a paper ballots, how many?
No, it's not paper.
It's not paper.
Right. They would, if they, I'll get to that in the early vote. But if you show up at the early vote center, and what we would do is we electronically would know what ballot style. So the machine will be set for your ballot style. So it wouldn't have to be a separate piece of paper. But then the system in Franklin County is an electronic touchscreen display. So it'll show it starts with the presidential race, and it goes for every race, and you can touch the screen, select the candidate you want to select for the different race, and then there's a button at the bottom of it to go to the next page. And so you just page through the ballot as if you were looking at a booklet but it's on a touch screen, and you can indicate which races you want to vote for. And then when you're done, it will actually have a review screen where you can review the selections that you've already made to make sure that you did select the ones you wanted to select. Or if you missed a particular race that you want to vote for, it will indicate that it'll show you which ones you've voted for, so you know if you've missed one, you may want to go back and select a candidate in that particular race. And then it gives you, once you hit select, it'll give you one last chance. Do you want to review it, or you want to confirm your ballot? And you hit confirm, and it'll say, the machine will say, the screen will read, machines don't say that, the screen will read that thank you for voting. And once you see that screen that says thank you for voting, then you know that you've actually cast your ballot. So, and that's on the machine. Now, the other method that we have to vote is when we talk about absentee, if you vote absentee by mail, you will get a paper ballot in the mail. And that paper ballot, again, so we'll have a paper ballot with your ballot combination based on where you live. So it'll be specific to your, to where you live and what what races you should be voting on. We're able to do that by, we would print it right then and there, and it gets mailed out. So we don't have a room full of different sheets of paper. It's generated for your ballot combination. It's inserted into an envelope with a label for your envelope, and then it's sent to you. So I mean, in fact, we've got a room much bigger than this that has the equipment that processes that sorting and stuffing and tracking of that ballot, so that what you're sent is the ballot that you should receive, and then we can actually track when was it sent out, when was it requested, when was it sent out, and then when it comes back, we can track that you in fact did send your ballot back. And you can track it as well, so that you know, all right, well, wait a minute, I sent this in on Friday and the Board of Elections doesn't have it yet. Okay, and you can keep track of it so that you know, oh, okay, you check our website on Thursday, you check it on Friday, oh, there it is. Okay, Board of Elections got my ballot, good, I'm good to go. If you keep checking it and for some reason you see it's not there, you can always call the board to find out what might have happened. So, but the vote by mail, you can find an application on our website, and you have to fill out the application online. Well, you can fill it out online. You have to print it out and send it in and sign it. You have to physically print something out and sign it because we do need a signature. So, yes, sir.
So those ballots, they're being stored in your office right now?
Correct. They are under
in the envelope. Just stays there.
They stay there. In fact, and I'll talk a little bit about election security when we get down in a few moments. But yeah, so those are starting to come back. We've actually sent out over 145,000 absentee ballots by mail. We've had so far about 20. Now we're up to today, based on today's, we are up to 27,000 people who have showed up at the early vote center to cast their ballot. And the thing is, it's so quick and easy to get through the early vote center. People have requested by absentee, by mail, and the vast majority of them have been mailed out. So now what we're working on is the daily mail. So what requests come in, we are able to turn around those in 24 hours. So if you requested it today, it would be out in the mail tomorrow. So, and again, you can get an application on our website. Oh, I forgot to bring, I have some with me today if you'd like some. But you have to send it to our office, and then we'll send you the ballot in the mail.
What's the deadline for that?
Deadline to request it, the deadline to request it is the noon on the Saturday before the election day. Obviously, the sooner you get it, the better. It has to be postmarked by the Monday before election day. It has to be received by the end of the day on election day. So we have people who stop at our office on Morse Rd and deposit it. We have a drop box where you can deposit the absentee ballots. So again, it's just one of those things that as you're getting closer to election day, you may want to make sure it gets there on time. You want to make sure that it's delivered, that the postal service gets it to us in time.
So I'm sorry. So the absentee ballot, you can mail it in. If you don't have enough time to mail it, you can personally take that ballot and send to the Board of Election office like by 8 p.m. on election day. Is that right?
It has to be there before 7:30 because
before
the polls close on election day. So if you have your absentee ballot, regardless of where you are in the state of Ohio, if you go to your local Board of Elections by 7:30 on election day, you can turn in your absentee ballot at your local Board of Elections, wherever that, usually it's located in the county seat, the county capital in the county. So the other one I wanted to talk about is the election day voting. On Tuesday, November 8th, that's when all the voting takes place at the polling locations. We have, just in Franklin County, we have 378 different locations throughout Franklin County. We have well over 800 separate precincts in Franklin County. We recruit about 4,500 poll workers to work the Board of Elections. I mean, if you are a registered voter, you can also serve as a polling official if you'd like. I actually brought some applications if you'd like to, if somebody would like to apply. We give training to anybody who's, and it's not volunteering, by the way. We actually pay poll workers. Poll workers receive, if you're a poll worker, anything other than the voting location judge, it's $147. If you're the voting location judge, or voting location manager, if you're managing the whole location, and that's typically somebody who's a little bit more experienced, but they'll actually receive $197 for the day. Again, it's a long day. It starts at 5:30 in the morning and goes till 7:30 or beyond, depending on how late the polls are open. The polls actually open at 5 or at 6:30 in the morning. The polling officials have to be there at 5:30. So if you're going to be a judge or work the polls, but the polls open at 6:30, they're open until 7:30. If you are in line at 7:30 to vote, you will be allowed, even if it means the polling officials are staying until 8 o'clock, 8:15, 8:30, it doesn't matter. If somebody is in line at 7:30, then they are allowed to vote, and the polls stay open as long as it takes for that individual to cast their ballot. So when you show up at a polling location, check-in process, typically you'll find that they have a number of poll books in front of them, actually printed poll books. We're moving to electronic, but we won't be able to do it for this election. So, but if you show up at a polling location, you'll see a number of poll books divided based on the alphabet, and you go to the book that is for your letter in the alphabet, and the polling official will have you sign in the poll book. They're going to ask you for identification. So any driver's license will serve as a photo ID. Any other government issued photo ID with your address on it. Military ID will suffice. If it's a valid driver's license, even if it doesn't have your current address on it, if your address is correct in the poll book, whether your address is correct on your driver's license is immaterial, as long as the driver's license is a valid photo ID, so it's not expired, it's valid, then you can use that as your ID. If you don't have driver's license, you can always use a current utility bill, whether it's a cell phone, and current means anything that's 12 months or more recent in the last 12 months would be considered current. So again, a utility bill, a cell phone statement, a gas bill, whatever that might be, that would suffice for purposes of serving as an identification. A paycheck, a government check of any sort would serve as valid ID. And so again, that covers the vast majority of valid IDs that you'd have to present. But somebody has to present an ID. The polling official will verify that you are who you say you are and have you sign in the poll book. And then at that point, you'll be, they'll give you an authority to vote slip. It's a little slip of paper. Yes?
So do you accept the state employee's ID?
I'm sorry?
State employee badge as valid ID? Like
The state employee have badge.
The badge.
Oh.
some places.
Government
No,
worker,
it has to be a government ID. It has to have your name and your current address. The only one that
Address, okay.
if it has a current address and your name, but it's not a government issued ID.
Okay.
So
I just
it
know
would
that
not.
different, banks have different, policies. Some banks accept state employee ID badge. Some places no, it's not acceptable. So sometimes just curious, what's going on here.
But for voting, it has to be a government issued ID.
Okay, that's
Now
fine.
again, your bank statement can serve as an ID, even though it doesn't have a picture of you on it. If it has your current address, that will be accepted by the Board of Elections. So
I'm
yes.
wondering about the verification of the, say, gas bill.
Mhm.
You have your name and address on it, and they're all valid. But if somebody steal my gas bill and present as me, how do you verify? Maybe it's simple for you. to tell, but how do you verify?
No. I mean, it could be a risk of it happening, but that person's going to have to sign your name when they show up in the poll book, and if they don't sign similar to you, so the polling official can challenge that. That doesn't look like his signature. So.
But even for me, sometimes I cannot even tell whether this is me signed yesterday or today because it's slightly different, or the signature can be mimicked by other people. Yeah. I know it's challenging.
I mean, it is challenging.
Yeah.
But, I mean, those are the rules that we have to operate under. So I mean, it is possible, but I mean, again, it is a criminal offense for somebody to do that. So,
yeah, I know 99%, maybe 99.99% of people will be voting on their good faith, but it's just something that I can think of, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Bad people can always do
the
contrary.
I believe you. Having been a treasurer and having been in this role, I think of that too. So,
okay.
But yes, sir.
So, Franklin County, right?
Mm-hmm.
All follow the same procedure.
Correct.
Same voting machine.
Right.
Do they? All say the same? It's exact same voting
In
machine?
Franklin County, yes.
Okay.
And unless, of course, you're choosing absentee, you vote on a paper ballot.
Right. But in terms
aside
of using a voting machine, all the procedures are the same across the county.
Mm-hmm. Right. And across the state, the procedures are the same, but the voting system may be different.
Mm-hmm.
In Ohio, we have what's called the Board of Voting Machine Examiners. It's a state board that is set up to certify machines for use in Ohio. Mm-hmm. So if a company has a voting system that they want to sell mm-hmm. to counties in Ohio, they have to go to that board and have that board certify that voting system as being accurate and handicap accessible. I mean, all the criteria that the state sets for what would be allowed to be sold in Ohio to counties. And right now there are 5 systems that are eligible in Ohio. So there are some counties that use the machines that we use. There are some counties that use paper ballots. So again, there are 5 different types of systems that are being utilized throughout Ohio to conduct the ballot. But their processes are the same. The ballot, the ID requirements and so forth, mm-hmm. there has to be consistency throughout Ohio. And to the extent, and obviously there may be some differences based on the voting system that they use, but otherwise they are consistent across the state of Ohio. And in the United States, each state, and that was a conversation we had a little bit before we started with a couple of folks, was the fact that in the United States, the states govern the conduct of elections in their states. So, and that's why you'll see sometimes the federal government trying to intervene as it relates to how a particular state is conducting its elections, because under the federal constitution, it's the states that set the standards for how votes will be conducted in their state. And so, and they can set the rules. That's why Ohio can have 28 days of early vote, and New York may have 1 day of early vote, and that's it. And it's just because the states choose to, what they're choosing to offer. So, we went through the ID requirements, we went through the voting machines. The voting machines are the same touch screen that you'd see at the early vote center. Yes, sir.
Yeah, question. So, if I live in, let's talk about Ohio. I live in Delaware, but can I drop my ballot in Franklin?
No.
No. So I have to go to
your board of elections in your county. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So.
If you go there vote and they are not going to check ID, so that's still possible, right?
I'm sorry?
If you go to the the place, just vote, mm-hmm. and you said you are not going to check ID, so who knows?
They check to make sure your name is in the
system.
voter roll, right?
Now,
so that's the problem for registration. You can just put any address over there, just my name, and when you go there vote, you can say, oh, your name is here. Yeah, this is address in your list, but you don't really verify what is my actual address.
Well, we asked for the ID, but yeah, you're right. It's that we're accepting if you've been able to provide some proof that you live where you say you live, then we'll accept that.
So how do you verify, or is that a mechanism to backtrack?
So the burden is on you.
See, somebody cast a vote, and then later on we find out that this person does not even have voting rights. can we go after this person as long as we find?
That would be a form of voter fraud.
Yeah, no, there's a family.
Because they would have had to register to vote.
Yeah.
In order to vote, and if they're not registered but they tried to vote, in that instance, again, it depends. I mean, we wouldn't, if someone in good faith believes that they were in fact eligible and registered to vote, then we're not going to prosecute them if they cast a provisional ballot. If they were registered to vote and they weren't in the poll book, if they're in the poll book, it's because they've registered to vote. Now, if somebody claims to be a citizen and they're not a citizen,
right? In that case,
and if we were to find that out, then yes, that would be offensive.
How did you find that out? Do you video record the voting process, or you use fingerprints whenever possible? So it's very hard to find out.
It is. I mean, it's
once they cast the vote, they left. It's gone. It's gone.
Right. It's a part of, and that's one of the things about our system is that you can't trace a vote back to once that person casts their ballot. It's an anonymous ballot that you can't ever trace back how you voted your particular ballot.
Oh, that's the potential a big hole there that people can take advantage of.
Nobody does.
Nobody does.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things I want to make sure of is we talked about the hours of early vote or the in-person voting. We do make sure that it's handicap accessible. So those who have disabilities, you're allowed to have assistance for yourself at the polling location. Whether it's physical assistance, if you need somebody to assist you, if you need a chair to sit down while you're casting a vote, the Board of Elections, the folks there will be happy to do that. If you need somebody to actually be there to assist you, you can have somebody, as long as that person is not your employer, and as long as that person is not a labor representative if you are a member of a labor organization. And that's really just to avoid intimidation. But if you wanted to have your spouse there to help you, oftentimes we see it where children will help their elderly parents to just assist them. You may have a situation where there's a language barrier and that person may not understand. We actually have some where it is literacy, that you'll have an individual, if they're a new immigrant, they may not be literate in the English language, but yet they're a citizen and they're eligible to vote, and but they may not be able to understand. So somebody can they can have a family member or anyone, a friend, come with them and assist them in casting their ballot. They can't touch the machine for them, they can't fill in the oval for them, but they can assist them and direct them, to assist that person in understanding the ballot so that they can vote their ballot. But the physical casting of the ballot still has to be done by that individual unless there's some type of physical limitation.
Is there a way to confirm once one has casted the ballot? Is there a way to confirm, say, I cast the ballot at a polling station and go back home and confirm that the ballot is counted?
Well, I mean, in terms of the absentee, you can, because you'll see that we've received it. And in terms of the provisional one, if you end up casting a provisional ballot, yes, you can go back and you can contact the Board of Elections and we can tell you whether. But if you cast it on a machine on election day, it's being counted. There's no way to
backtrack.
There's no way to retract that. I mean, I've talked to some. We had some representatives from India, and they were talking about rejected ballots. And it's like, well, in the United States, once you cast your ballot, once you put that, once you press confirm, it's in the system, and there's no pulling it back. There's no way of rejecting somebody's ballot. The only time we have the ability to reject a ballot is if it's a provisional ballot, and that's only because of the way provisional is structured. It's done provisionally. It's done. We'll accept your ballot. We'll let you vote, but we're not going to count it until we know you're in fact eligible to vote. And once we've determined you're eligible to vote, we'll go ahead and count it. And that's the only instance in which we could potentially reject someone's vote is if we were doing it provisionally. We were accepting their vote provisionally in the first place until we confirmed it. And again, we have both sides, Democrats and Republicans, involved in the process. So everybody has an incentive to make sure things aren't counted if they're not supposed to be counted,
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure that they are counted if they're supposed to be counted. So having those two parties involved ensures that no one party or the other is going to gain a political advantage in that process, because both are competing to try and count as many as they can and make sure that ballots don't get counted if they're not supposed to be counted. So,
Gotcha. Is there a way to tell if there's a duplicated vote? Say the vote from the same name, from the same address, but done twice.
we do that through the registration process, is trying to eliminate duplication. But if you're showing it if you showed up and tried to vote in the poll book at the same precinct, it's going to indicate that you have already been there and you've already cast your ballot.
So then I tell the person that it's not me.
They'll make you vote a provisional ballot, and they'll have to determine whether or not somebody showed up. Maybe they had somebody sign in the wrong place on the poll book, and it shouldn't have signed in the wrong. They signed in the wrong slot. Did they not? But somebody had to have produced some form of ID to vote to cast that ballot. So and if you came in and you had a valid ID,
Right.
they're going to have you cast their provisional vote and determine that it was in fact a
So
legitimate vote. So
in that case, is it likely that my vote, which is a legitimate vote, will not be counted because the other fraud vote took place earlier before me?
Well, again, we'd have to take a look at that specific, but I mean.
Okay, because on the election day, time is very limited to count.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what. Well, and election day, the results are all unofficial. That's another point that we wanted to make clear is election day results are unofficial, and then we have several weeks to go through the official canvassing process to finally certify the results. And we in Ohio or Franklin County, we'll have to certify our results by the 29th of November, and so that gives us almost 21 days to sort that all out and figure out, is this a vote that we should count? But again, that's going to send up red flags for us. We're going to have to investigate the original signature to
Right.
determine how it got cast. So I mean, it'll raise red flags for us. But if we determine that ultimately that the second legitimate vote should have been counted, it'll be counted. So let's see. I want to make sure we've talked a bit about provisional votes. We've talked a bit about the purged vote. Again, if our polling officials are always advised is to, if the person is in the right polling place and they want to vote, is to go ahead and at the very least, if they're not in the poll book, is to go ahead and let them vote a provisional. And there's an application that they have to fill out all of their information, and then they're given a paper ballot for that particular precinct. And so they vote all the same race as anybody would if they were voting on a machine, and it's just put into an envelope, and then that envelope is put into another one, and it's counted after the election once we've determined. And if you voted a provisional ballot, you can actually contact the Board of Elections to confirm whether or not your provisional ballot got counted. That is clearly one of those instances where you can know for sure that your vote got counted. And again, everybody who votes on election day on the machines, those votes are going to be counted. So, and the absentee vote, sometimes folks think that, and I've heard people say this, is that if they vote absentee, those votes don't get counted unless they're needed. And it's like, no, actually absentee voting, they are the very first votes to get counted on election night. So when people come to the early vote center and cast their ballot, or everybody who casts a ballot through the mail, those are actually the first results you see on election night. So if you're kind of following on the Board of Elections website, they are actually those very first results are the absentee votes. And usually those are a very good indicator of what direction the election results are going to go. So yes, sir.
So those votes are being counted on election day as the votes throughout the day?
Actually, we start processing them, so we run them through. I mean, we're going to have right now we've got almost 150,000 absentee ballots. By election day, we're probably going to have closer to 200,000 absentee ballots.
Mm-hmm.
So those we're allowed under state law to start opening the envelopes, start prepping the paper ballots that are returned to us. We can prep them all, start running them through the machines to process them, but we can't hit tabulate until election night. And then at that point, that's when we know what numbers, so what all the votes were cast. So like I said, we can run them through the machine, and the machine's collecting the data, but it's not generating any type of report that can be read by a human being. It's not generating any report that could tell us what the results of those absentees are. And that can't be generated until 7:30 on election night. So that's why, because again, the whole idea is that if that were the case, then you could know, okay, you know, this particular candidate's winning in the early vote because you're seeing it in real time. That's not the case in terms of absentee. Nobody sees any of the absentee calculations or tabulation until 7:30 on election night. So, so you know, it's the first ones to be tabulated, but it's not tabulated until 7:30.
So is there anyone, someone push the button, okay, to tabulate, or the machine kind of automatically, okay, when 7:30, you know, starts, you start to tabulate?
I haven't been there long enough to see this, but I have a feeling it's probably not going to let you do it until the internal clock of the equipment tells you that it's 7:30. So just because of that very same thing, because it can't happen.
Is the machine hooked up to any network backup device?
We're just going to get into that.
Okay. So there's a fire in case of there's an emergency or the building caused a fire.
Oh, I was thinking more in terms of it's not connected to the internet. It is connected, you know, it's plugged in. It's got a internal power source.
But all the hard disk will be gone, all the data will be gone if there's an emergency. Yeah, that's possible.
I mean,
there's no backup plan B.
Well, but the other part too is that we have multiple backups, and that's when we talked a little bit about the machines. The machines have three different checks, I guess, in internal. You've got a paper tape, so when you press the button to cast your ballot on the machines here in Franklin County, there's a paper tape to the left-hand side, and that paper tape's going to indicate who you voted for. So if I press a button for, you know, candidate X, it's going to say I cast a ballot for candidate X. If I change my mind and deselect that candidate, it's going to say that I deselected that candidate. It's going to, you know, if I press a candidate for candidate Y, I press the button, it's going to say candidate Y. Now, so as I'm going along and picking my candidate, I can actually look and see, okay, it's getting it right. I press the candidate for this race, for this one, and it's showing who I voted for as I'm voting for them. So they got to check, compare the two, and then when you're done voting, that paper tape kind of rolls up so nobody can, the next voter can't see it. Mm-hmm. But the internal to the machine, there is a flash drive in the machine that those get removed. It's kind of like the flash drives you have in a camera, a little square memory card. And the memory card gets pulled out at the end of the night, and they're all assembled and taken to the Board of Elections. And then there's a memory external hard drive that at the end of the night, the information from each of the machines is collected on that external drive. It's what helps program the machine to your particular ballot, and what it'll do is it collects all that information at the end of the night, and that's taken. So you've got that as an external source of the information. You've got the flash of the memory cards, and you have the paper tape. And then at the end of the night, when the polls close, the polling officials print out the election results for all the machines. They're printed out, that paper tape, the flash, the memory cards, and the external drive, for lack of a better word. That external drive, all three of those are taken down to the Board of Elections. And all of the election officials sign the paper tape. Every election official, they go through it, and it was in fact generated properly, it's reflecting it, and they go ahead and sign off on that, that it was all, that they were there when that paper tape was generated. And so you got the paper tape, the memory card, the memory cards, and the
so three copies of the same thing, basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
One gets posted up on the window at the polling location. So if somebody wants to see and go up to the window and see what the results were in their particular precinct, and you'll see that actually happen in areas like if you have a small municipal election, where you'll see people go around to the various locations in their municipal election to see what the results were for all the precincts. Because you may have 20 precincts you may have 6 voting locations in the city, and you've got 20 precincts, and so you can go to 6 locations, get all the results, and you can know before the Board of Elections posted online, you'd know what the results were in your small, local election. And so there are campaigns that do that when it's a school levy or it's a local city council race or something like that. They can get around to the polling locations before they'd ever see it on the Board of Elections website.
So the counting of the votes is an automated process, it's a manual process?
It's an automated process. So
it's
the
a program?
The cards are all read. The programming is done, and that's all done with a Democrat and a Republican involved in the programming of the election, and the tabulation process is not connected to the internet. The equipment that does the tabulation is not connected to the internet, and so there's no opportunity for hacking of the results. When we report the results, we actually take a flash drive, download the results onto the drive, and then it goes to another computer where the results are transmitted. So the computer that does the tabulation is never connected to the internet. So let's see, all the voted ballots are always kept under double lock, one with a Democratic key and one locked with a Republican key. So they have to, those are always, again, double. If it's been voted ballot, any area in the Board of Elections that has voted ballots, the early vote center where we have the voting machines, every night the voting machines are zip tied with a seal and a number on the seal, and that is recorded every morning when they open it back up. And the room where the machines are stored overnight, double lock, the Republican key and a Democratic key. So, and the box where the keys are all stored has the Democrats who have access to it, you punch in your code and you put your palm down on a palm scanner, it scans your palm, and if I punched in the right code and it reads the palm scan, it'll open up. It lets me take out, but it will only let me take out the Democratic keys, because the Republican keys would be it's like a magnet. I wouldn't be able to pull that out unless unless a Republican had activated the machine. If a Democrat activates the machine, it will allow the Democrat to take out the keys that they're allowed to take out. And then if I hold on to it for too long, there'll be a message goes to the locksmiths who manage that and say, wait a minute, Director Leonard had his key out for more than a half hour. What's going on? Why does that happen? And we just had it happen recently when we put key back in, and they go, well, wait a minute, you had it out for way long. And it was just because we were running downtown to drop off an external hard drive copy of the entire voter registration to the data center. So we had the keys out for a long time. Yes?
Okay, please help me out, okay? Because for the past couple of weeks, I heard lots of things about, some machine could have those programs, coding programs, and when you vote this one, it can automatically switch to the other candidate.
But you would see it on the paper tape if that's the case.
But some people, maybe they cannot just really read it because their age or whatever, or they don't just care. Is that any possible? The machine has that. I understand you said that there's no internet connection, but how about the machine itself?
And the program?
Yes.
Well, no, but it's programmed by a Democrat and a Republican, and they're not going to want to give any advantage to one party or the other. So I don't see it happening. We test the equipment and we also go through testing the equipment and casting votes on the equipment to make sure that I will test every ballot style combination, and I will cast enough votes on it, and then ensure that the votes that I cast on it are that the results show the votes as I casted them on the machine. So we do conduct tests of every machine before we certify it to go out into the field. So
is that one can only verify on the screen? There's no printout after they cast the vote.
I'm sorry?
There's no printout after they cast the vote, is that right?
Right, that's right.
Okay, everything is on the fly, real time.
What's inside the machine is it's maintained in the machine. But the voter themselves don't get a hard copy printout of the vote they cast.
I feel like this is something really easy to do, but they haven't been done. I don't know why. Like when you, for example, if you go to a store You buy something, you got a receipt,
Yes.
and you just click the button. I want an email receipt.
There's a good
Email
reason.
receipt.
There's a good
I know
reason.
Well,
There's a
Or
good
something
reason.
like that. If somebody, go to the store, say, I want to return this, and they said, okay, show me your email receipt. They don't have it.
I think there's a
Meaning
good
that
reason
person
for
didn't
that.
buy that.
The other
It is
part
me
of it
who
too
bought
is
that.
you lose the anonymity of you
Exactly.
casting your vote.
It's an
Is if
honest
someone-
vote.
That's one of the challenges of internet voting is
I
that
think
you've
that-
got to create the connection for purposes of tracking the person vote, but then you've also got to create a mechanism where you can separate the voter from the vote that they cast, so that I can never know how you cast
But I
your
think it's
particular
up
ballot.
to the person who want to give their privacy out. For me, I don't too much concerned about my privacy. I'm more concerned about whether my vote is casted legitimately, legally. So I want to give up my rights. I don't care, I voted for Hillary, for
I
example.
think it's not just privacy, because if you can have a receipt of your vote, then your vote can be bought.
Right. That's one of the
No, I
things
should
we're
have a
dealing with
receipt
right
of
now
my
is-
vote.
is
You
just-
don't.
It's just
I
the
should.
selfie.
But then your vote can be bought.
What do you mean by
I can
bought?
promise someone, I'm gonna vote for you want me to, here's my proof.
Right.
That's up to the person whether they
You
want to
cannot
buy your
allow
vote.
that. That cannot allow that.
No, this is a different
Well-
story.
This year is such a special year.
I'm
We have
talking
among our community, there
That's
are a
always
lot
the
of
case.
discussion.
No, that's a separate
because there are
issue.
two
You
camps,
can
the
never
Trump camp and
have
the
a
Hillary
receipt
camp.
You're talking
of your
about-
vote
And there's
result.
a huge
that's-
argument.
Because
among
I
the
need to
two
know
as
my
to whether
vote
the
is counted.
voting
That's the
elections
issue.
fair
What I vote.
and
Yeah.
other things.
Who
That's
I
why
voted
it's the
for.
other question
I need to
about
know who I voted
the
for.
process
Right.
and the details, whether it can be tempered or not. And
Right.
I mean, this is just such a great country that has this wares that can be spent on the voting. And
Yeah.
I am just always amazed at how much money that we spend each year
Yeah.
during this general election
Well, we're
year.
going to have to spend more again. Well, when you think about the early vote center, the early vote center is a very
have to
expensive
staff- right.
process to maintain. We have 100 machines, we have
All those
a
people.
significant number of staff members who spend their entire day in the early vote center helping voters cast their ballot, and it's all for the purpose of making it easier. One of the challenges we have is that the equipment that we're voting on now is equipment that was purchased in 2006. And so, again, it's always that keeping up with the technological capabilities of voting equipment, but at the same time, I mean, it costs money to stay up on the latest. And so, but also making sure that what equipment we use is, again, handicap accessible, is not susceptible to being in some way corrupted, so that it's a delicate balance. You want to make sure that the equipment that you're utilizing has been thoroughly tested, and so that may mean sometimes it's going to take a few years for that equipment to get certified and be available. So you may not have the latest and greatest technology, but and some of it is that concern about. I mean, we had a conversation with some of the members of the media today about the selfie legislation, that somebody can take a selfie of themselves. It's one thing to take a selfie of yourself casting your vote, that hey, I'm at the board of elections and I'm casting my vote. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to take a picture of your ballot, because the concern is voter intimidation, voter selling your ballot. That when you walk out of the ballot box and you don't have any documentation of how you voted, then nobody can compel you to show them something, because I don't have anything. But if they say, well, take a picture of it. And, well, no, it's against the law to take the picture of it. The board of election folks aren't going to let me take a picture of it. Mm-hmm. But because again, there was a time where that was more prevalent, that employers, hey, this is we support this candidate in our shop, and if you supported another candidate, you might get fired. And so they wanted to make sure, they wanted to see, how did you vote, because I want to make sure that you're voting for our candidate. Yep. And so there was that opportunity for intimidation.
But that's a different story. It is up to me whether to give them that picture or not. If you are my boss, you say, I want to know who you voted for, right, because you took a picture. Yes, I took a picture, but I don't want to show you.
Right.
This is my right. But you cannot say, I don't want to give you the right, and I don't want to prevent fraud.
Right.
That's a different issue. So I have my right. I want to exercise my right. Sure. Yeah, just this is my personal comment.
先讲完
Okay.
你再来
I think
问。
we so that's
Sorry about the
No,
interruption.
that's okay.
You want to go through?
So we went through, I mean, listen, in terms of we've gone through a lot of things I wanted to cover in, if you know somebody who's hospitalized on election day, and for some reason they end up having to go, they can actually, we have staff, if you contact the Board of Elections, we will send somebody out to that hospital to, it'll be a Democrat and a Republican who will come out with the ballot for that individual, and I know it's amazing, but we will do that. And we will, that individual will be allowed to cast a ballot, and it'll be placed in the envelope, and it'll be taken by the Democrat and Republican back to the Board of Elections, and it will be counted. So again, if you know somebody that has that situation, I mean, we recognize life gets in the way. That's why we encourage people to vote by early vote, whether it's absentee by mail or whether it's in person, is because election day, life gets in the way. And suddenly you think, oh, I'm just going to stop after work, and then suddenly the boss needs you to stay later, or my children got sick and I need to take somebody to urgent care, or my car broke down and I got to go, oh. And suddenly 7:30 comes and goes and you missed the opportunity to vote.
Oh, so the closing time is 7:30?
7:30 on election day. So that's why it opens at 6:30, and sometimes people don't get there because I got to get to work, I got to get the kids to school, and then suddenly I come at lunchtime, I can't break away for lunch, and next thing you know, your 7:30 is here and gone, and you haven't cast your ballot. So that's why I think early vote's a very easy way to do it. And yes.
Sorry, one more question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It bothered me so many years, okay? In this country, why don't you just set election day as a countrywide holiday so everybody can easily vote? Seriously, it bothered me so much because some people
you
were
just
so
need to
busy.
pass the
Let her-
constitutional amendment.
Let her finish the
That's it.
question.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, each state dictates how they're going to conduct their votes. I mean, you're not wrong in the sense that the day we've chosen as voting day,
It's
the
holiday.
first Tuesday after the first Monday
That's right.
in November, is kind of, I mean, it's a historic anachronism. It's just a function of how we've always done it, and so we've always done it that way.
Yeah, but
Is
things
because
change, world change, right? You can always change based on the
right, but in some respects too, it's something people all know. I mean, it's just something that people have become accustomed to, is that they vote. But really the whole reason of it was when we were an agricultural society, is that you didn't want to have it on a Sunday because of the Sabbath. You didn't want to have it on a Monday because you needed an extra day to travel to the county seat to cast your ballot. And so they didn't have it on Monday, they had it on Tuesday because transportation wasn't what it is today, and so it took longer to get to the voting location to cast your ballot, and so they made it on Tuesday. And that's the way it's stuck ever since. But now you see more states offering, broader opportunities to cast your vote, but still some states are very limited in how you can cast your vote. Some of them limit felons. That we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that if somebody is no longer incarcerated, they are, in Ohio, they are eligible to vote. They have to re-register, but they're eligible to vote. Some states, if you're a felon, once you're convicted, you could have been out for years. You're not eligible to vote. That's just the way that particular state chooses to administer its elections. But so again, states have the ability to regulate their elections, and some choose to give more time to early vote, some choose to give less, some choose to offer more opportunities. And again, I think technology will ultimately lead, as more millennials get to a point where and the technology allows us to do that in a way that is safe and that we can ensure the integrity of the way we conduct the election.
One quick question relating to that 7:30 deadline. Is it that you are in line and you are eligible to vote, or you have to cast the vote before 7:30?
That you are in line.
So you are in line.
What will happen is when you're in line at 7:30, one of the polling officials will stand at the end of the line. This is what they will do. They will stand at the end of that line, and anybody who shows up after 7:30, they will be turned away. I'm sorry, the polls are closed.
Okay.
You can't vote, and that's how it's done. I've worked the polls myself, and at the end of the night, you send somebody out as soon as 7:30 is on the, and the clock is based on the clock on the machine, the voting machine. And so if the clock on the voting machine says 7:30, somebody is sent out to the back of the line, and anybody who shows up after that is told that the polls are closed for the day. And so that's how that's controlled. Old school, but
yeah, that
it's
works.
controlled.
That works.
But it
That's
works.
curious.
So,
Yeah.
So from 6:30 to 7:30, that's Eastern time across all American
Nope,
states?
and so you'll see,
Time
you'll, well, and some states have different hours too.
Yeah.
Some may close at 7 o'clock in certain states.
Yep.
So yeah, it's, and that's why you will see typically, the television networks have had this tradition of not calling the presidential elections until the polls are closed in at least the western states, California. So that the West Coast is closed, and I guess they don't care so much about Hawaii, unfortunately, Hawaii or Alaska. But they typically will wait until the West Coast have the polling locations in the West Coast states have closed, and at that point then you'll start seeing elections get called. Now the problem is, particularly in this election, there will be states that will be seen as critical to one candidate or another. In this case, I think we all understand, is that Donald Trump, because there's been so much in the media about the narrow path that he has to get the Electoral College votes. So you may see that if he doesn't win certain East Coast states, that it would be difficult. Florida, Pennsylvania. If some of those states don't go to the Republican candidate for president, that it's going to be difficult, even regardless of what happens in the western states that are expected to vote, that they'll likely vote, they'll likely go Democrat. And so some of that calculation, you may start to see, they won't call it, but if they're starting to call certain states, it may be a reflection of
But the East Coast are already Democrats, so the East Coast are already Democrats already, based on the polls.
Right,
so,
the polls show, you're right.
So that's kind of pre-counted already towards the odds for Trump.
Well,
to win.
again, I think the polls, and the polls are just that, they're polls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ultimate poll is the one on election day. And so, but polls have become very sophisticated, and you'll see a lot of polls of polls. I mean, back in the 40s, when they predicted Harry Truman was going to lose to Thomas Dewey, there were only a few companies that conducted polling. Now you have multiple universities and private polling companies. You see the candidates who are conducting polls.
So my point is that until the last minute, we cannot tell whether you should go vote or not. Based on the coastal results, it's not reliable.
Right, and that's part of the reason why the networks don't call it, because they don't want to discourage people from voting in California or Oregon, because the polls in Ohio may have closed at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and yet the polls in California and Oregon and Washington.
So who made
are
that
still
decision
open.
to call or not?
I'm sorry?
Who made that decision to call or not? Is it individual state call?
Oh, in terms of what time they want to close for the.
To call whether who is leading or who won the state is up to the state to call.
The networks are typically the ones that call that. The states simply generate the results. And so what you'll see is that the networks start looking. They look at exit polls. They'll start looking at the results coming in, and they'll see, okay, Ohio's reported. They may say, okay, there's 60% of the vote coming in, and the margin is this. What's the likelihood that one or the other candidate is going to be able to win Ohio? So they're going to look at where the votes are coming in. They're going to look at how much of the vote is coming in. What's the margin between the two candidates? And they you start doing that assessment. Some states, you may see in a very Republican state, the margin may be huge, that Hillary Clinton would never be able to overcome that margin, even with 25% of the vote still outstanding. The margin's too large. They're going to call that state for Donald Trump. And the reverse may be true for Hillary Clinton. There may be a state that her margin is so big that despite there still being votes still left to be counted, the polls are closed, but the votes haven't been counted. The network might call that particular state for a particular candidate.
So it's up to the network, and there's no
exactly.
guaranteed
And the networks will do it based on.
report.
And again, they've got statisticians, they've got folks who are very familiar in that data analysis that would be able to tell them, because they don't want to get it wrong either. They don't want to call a state for somebody and then have to change the,
Right,
you know,
right.
I
For sure.
remember that in I remember that in 2000.
Embarrassing.
You don't remember that in 2000. I remember that in 2000 when they called Florida and then they reversed it and called it. So the networks don't want to get it wrong, so they're going to wait until their analysis is they're sufficiently confident in their analysis to make that call.
Sure, thank you.
So.
Let's
But-
save our questions and still have a couple topics.
Oh, well, as I said, I could talk a lot about the different races that are up, but that's why I brought the League of Women Voters thing, because we have the presidential race, you got a U.S. Senate race, you've got and then the congressional races. In Franklin County, we've got 3 congressional seats in Franklin County. Steve Stivers is the current incumbent in the 15th congressional. Pat Tiberi is the incumbent in the 12th congressional, and Joyce Beatty is the incumbent in the 3rd congressional. And again, depending on where you live in Franklin County, you may vote on one of those. Congressional districts actually extend beyond the county lines, so you'll see congressional districts may be made up of several counties because of their size. Ohio has 18 congressional districts and 16, I think. But the congressional district, so because of the number and the number of counties we have, with 88 counties and 16 to 18 congressional districts, you're going to have multiple counties in a congressional district. So the 3rd congressional district is contained within Franklin County. It does not extend over the county line. But you'll have statewide races, state senators, state representatives. There's also Supreme Court justices at the statewide level. So in Ohio, we elect justices to the Supreme Court. You'll see some information about. They don't run they don't run with the party designation next to their name. So you won't see on the ballot. You won't see whether somebody is a Democrat or a Republican.
How many state Senate and how many state congressmen?
Congressional representatives?
Yeah.
Congressional representatives, I think there's 16 or 18, I'm trying to remember, because I know we've got 18 electoral college votes, and I thought that it was based on the number of House seats you have in Ohio. But in central Ohio, we've got 3. So it could be one of any of the 3 and you get to vote for one person, depending on what congressional district you sit in. State Senate, there are 33 state Senate districts and there are 99 House districts. So every state Senate district is comprised of 3 House districts. So you're a representative, and you see that sometimes in House races where somebody was a state senator and is now running for the state House because they're running for a House district that is within their Senate district. Or you may see a House member who's running for a state Senate seat. It's because it's one of the House districts that are within that Senate district. So you've got countywide races. This year, probably the highest profile countywide race is the county prosecutor's race. You've probably all seen TV ads about the county prosecutor's race. There are some other ones. You've got 2 county commissioner races that are up this year in Franklin County. You've got the county treasurer's race, my old office, the Franklin County Treasurer's Office. You've got 2, neither of whom is the incumbent. So you've got 2 individuals running for the county treasurer's office. Then you have the clerk of courts, county engineer, the county coroner. And actually the county engineer and the county coroner are not contested races. So the incumbent that filed for election has no challenge. The same thing with the sheriff. The candidate that won the primary is the candidate that will be the next sheriff. All 3 individuals are unopposed. The county clerk of courts, they're opposed, and that's in the materials as well. Judges, again, we elect judges in Ohio. So in addition to the Supreme Court justices, we have local judges at the common pleas level. In Ohio, judges are elected at the county level. So you'll have common pleas judges who handle the criminal cases, the murder, rape, aggravated assaults, those types of things. Anything that would be considered a felony in Ohio is that they are they come under the jurisdiction of the Common Pleas Court. You have a number of judges on the Common Pleas Court that are up for re-election, and some of them are opposed. You have the Domestic Relations Court, which is just that. They deal with juvenile offenses and divorce cases. That's a special division within the court, and there's a couple of judges that are up for, or one judge, I'm sorry, that's up for re-election this year. And then you also have the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals, kind of like the state Senate races can be, or the congressional districts, can actually be multi-county. In Franklin County, the Court of Appeals is just for Franklin County. So we have a number of, 8 judges of the Court of Appeals in Franklin County, and 4 of them are up for re-election this year, and none of the 4 have an opponent. So now I think about it, it was why bring it up, because they're not contested races. So, but the Court of Appeals are elected at the county level as well. So that kind of covers all of the camp. I may have forgotten the state school board. There are state school board races, and I'm sure that they're in the materials from the League of Women Voters. State school board just deals with issues relating to the governance of school systems at a state level. Some standards that are used to govern schools throughout the state of Ohio. A lot of those policy decisions are made by the state school board, and so the state of Ohio is divided up into districts, and so there are actually state school board elections in Franklin County. So you'll have the opportunity to select some candidates for the state school board. So that kind of covers a lot of what, well, pretty much we've gone on for quite a bit. So I didn't think I'd have a difficulty talking for half an hour. So
you did a great job.
Almost half an hour.
I said I know you hear a lot in the media about vote rigging and rigged elections, and I just really do want to assure you that you've got, in Ohio, you have a system that's structured in such a way that it prevents that opportunity, because you've got the 2 parties involved. But all the boards of elections are evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. You've got partisans who are looking out for their particular party to make sure that nobody's trying to gain an advantage in that process. The equipment, again, all of the equipment we use at every county in Ohio is, they make sure that the equipment's not connected to the internet, that we take steps to conduct mock elections so that we test our equipment. Again, all the people involved they're professionals who are seeking to do this in a way that's fair and free election for people. I mean, we take pride in conducting the elections in a way that people feel confident about. I mean, really, my purpose of being in government service is that I want people to have faith in their government's ability to do the right thing for the right reason. And so that's why I'm proud to be part of this election process, because what greater interaction do people have with their government than their vote? I mean, I dealt with their taxes. That's not an easy thing to deal with. And now I deal with their casting their vote. And so the professionals that we work with are genuinely interested in doing it the right way. Probably the most disappointing thing the election folks deal with is when nobody shows up at the polls. Is that and when we hear all these claims about vote rigging, when there's really no basis for it. There's no evidence that it's happening, and yet we have, and again, we've got the partisans involved who are working at the elections to make sure that no one party or the other is gaining any particular advantage. So again, I'm happy to stick around if you have a few more questions, but I know it's a little bit late of an evening, but again, I thanks for your time and your attention. So
Thank you. Thank you.
I thought we can cover like in 30 minutes. So,
I'm a politician by heart, and so you're never going to get me to speak for them. But really, we covered a lot. I mean, that's.
It's a